I've marked out and drilled my handle and my arm strap holes. There'll be another hole that'll go here. I use a hockey mask as a hand protection, and I'll have one more little clamp that holds it in place, but I won't put that on until I've got all the edging on, just to make sure it's in a good spot. So what I'm going to be doing now is I have to mark out where all my lacing holes go. So some of them are covered from the outside. All of them are covered from the outside. Some of them are covered on the inside. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little awl, and I'm just going to just push it just enough that I can feel the point come through. And then I'm going to come back from the outside, and I can see all my little marks from the awl, and then I'm going to actually work the hole clean. I'm going to do that from the outside so that I don't have to be worried that I'm going to push the fabric off of the aluminum. And when I put the awl through and give it a bit of a twist, then the square edges on the awl come up against the aluminum, and that cuts the fabric. And it's going to make it easier to actually sew the leather on, because I'm not going to be fighting to find the hole through everything, the 2 layers of leather and the canvas. Sometimes it's hard to line the holes up. So I'll just do that all the way around now. Alright, so to make my shield edging here, I've got a piece of 4-ounce leather. I had originally bought it to make a scabbard, which is why it's got all the pencil lines on it. And I've got a strap cutter. I've set it at 3 inches. So that'll give me enough room, plus a little bit, to wrap around the edging. So we're just going to run that off. So that'll be my edging. It'll wrap around the shield, and I'll sew it down along the edge there. So I'm just going to clean up the edges. This is a little edging tools for leather. It just cuts the corner off. And I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but it just kind of, I've done all this work so far, I might as well clean it up, make it look nice. So it's just a little sharp edge, and it knocks the corner off the leather. If I was doing a belt or something, I'd do both sides, both the front and the back, and then I'd come back with a slicker and smooth it off. But I just want to make this look just a little cleaner, but I'm not going to put a lot of work into that. This leather's so thin that the edger is bottoming out, so put it on top of another piece of leather here. You see I've got 2 long pieces and a short piece. The hide had some cuts in it from the cow, so I've worked around those. So I've got the 2 long pieces for the front and back edges, and then the short one will run along the top. I like doing it in sections like this. The front edge of the shield's going to take a lot of damage over the years, and if I do them in 3 different sections, and as a piece gets beaten up and worn through, I can just replace the one piece instead of redoing the whole shield. So there's my edge pieces cleaned up and ready to go. So last night I put the first of the leather edging on. I pre-soak it. It's an oak tan, so it takes the water really well. Sewed it on and left the top two holes open because I'm going to be putting a reinforcement corner on there. Now the top edge and the leading edge of the shield are going to take most of the damage, so I like to reinforce it with car door edging. So it's this stuff here. I bought this from a merchant at Penzic, but it's, I haven't tried buying it directly, but I'm sure you can just find it online from Auto Supply. And what it is, it's a heavy plastic, and inside there's little metal horseshoes with little teeth at the bottom, which is why I don't want to try taking it off, because they grip on fairly well onto the canvas. And that just gives a little extra padding between the aluminum on the inside and the leather on the outside. Helps take the damage pretty good. So apparently I've been having trouble with my voice recorder on my setup here, so I've done a bunch that was all in silent, so we'll try this again. So what I've got is I've taken my leather, I've soaked it in a bit of water. It's not super soft. It's got a consistency kind of like clay or Play-Doh, so it's flexible but not super floppy. And again, I've left the first hole open so I can put a support on that, an extra piece of leather. And I've started sewing down. Now, what I've done with the leather soft is I've marked a line about 1/4 of an inch in all the way along, and that's so that my stitching holes will stay nice and even along the front, and then I'll trim it on the back with whatever excess I have. And I'm using what's called a harness stitch. So that's a single piece of thread. I'm using a fake sinew, mostly for the looks. I don't really like it as a material. It's really slippery, so it slides back and forth a lot. So I'm not really happy with that, but it'll do for shield edging. And what you do is these are leather working needles. So got a fairly small eye on it, fairly robust shaft, and you put one on either end. And what we're going to be doing is you're working from the front to the back and then the back to the front, so at every stitch the threads crisscross each other like this, and that helps. It's a nice strong stitch harness. It's called a harness stitch because it was used on horse harnesses, and it works really well for stuff like this. So what I've been doing is I kind of pinch the leather tight, make sure it's snug around that edging. And this is a Leather Workers Awl. It's got a diamond shape and a chisel point instead of just a regular point like a regular awl would have. No idea if that was in focus or not. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where that hole is, fold the leather down over it, find that stitching line, and then just punch my hole through. Be careful. Make sure your finger's on the back or on either side of the hole so you don't stab your finger. And then I'm going to take the front needle, push it through from the front to the back, snug that up. I'm going to keep it tight and I'm going to pull up. That puts the thread on this side of the hole so that when I take my other needle and I feed it back through, it's less likely to catch and potentially cut the thread that I've already put through. I'll take that and I'll snug that down tight. And you'll see this stitch here was a little loose, and when I pulled it tight, it snugged up, and now this one's just a little loose. And as you work along, it'll keep the previous stitch tight. And when I'm all done this, leather will dry, it will shrink nice and tight, nice and snug like what I did last night. And it makes for a really nice finished edge. Okay, so let's try this again with different camera angles so you can get a better view of how this is all working. So there's my hole that I want. Kind of pinch the leather, wiggle it until that line's about where the tip of the chisel is. Bring that up and punch my hole, hopefully where the hole is. Not quite. There it is. Give it a little bit of a wiggle. Just feel it coming through in the back. I don't like going a bunch of holes at a time, because as the leather tightens up, as you're working along a curve, those holes will end up not lining up, which is pretty depressing to get all the way to here and you're back here somewhere and your holes aren't in the right spots. So when I'm doing something like this, the most I might work forward is 2 holes at a time, but it doesn't really save you much time, so I'll just go 1 at a time. Make sure it's lined up nice. Now sometimes it's a little stiff trying to pull the needle through. So what I've got a pair of just little pliers, and I've wrapped the jaws in some hockey tape so it doesn't damage the needle. And you can pull it through with that if it gets a little stuck. It makes it easier on your hands. I don't know how many holes are in this, but after a couple hundred holes, it might be worth my fingers not to have pulled through on every single one of them. So this is what the awl looks like. It's a diamond shape. And where's the camera? There it is. So you can see how it's got a chisel point right at the top here, as opposed to a woodworking awl. There it is. That's got a sharp point. Nice thing about the chisel point, it makes enough of a slice for the needle to get through, while with the sharp point, it's a little harder to get it through the hole. Okay, so I got to the end of my line. So the next couple holes are going to be picking up the corner reinforcement. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to backtrack, and I do the same stitching pattern, only I'm going to go back the other way. This can be sometimes a little entertaining because you're getting a lot of fabric through each of those holes. This is just a little back stitching. It's kind of like on a sewing machine where you hit reverse and stitch it backwards. It just helps hold the thread in place. Like I said, this particular thread is really slippery, so I don't trust just a straight knot with it. So I want to get it back here at least 2 or 3 holes. So that it will hold. And I might put a knot on it just to tidy up the ends. And I just pulled the thread. And then the same thing with the back one. And because I've already got my stitch line and it's already tight, I'm less concerned about cutting the threads in there. But I say cutting, I mean this thread is going through the middle of the other thread. It's not really cutting it per se. Being careful here because it's a bit of a pain at this point to pull the needle off of the thread. You see that it's getting pretty beaten up after going through so many holes. See if I can thread that back on. And just one more. I could just cut that off, but tie a little knot. And there we go. So now I've got one more edge to do, and then the corner bits. So I've got the first corner done here. So you can see I've sewn the angle shape and then picked up on the same stitch line as is on the shield. So that piece looks like that. And then I'll just sew that into those two seams there, and that'll make the corner. And then I'll soak it so it's nice and soft. I can fit it around nice and tight, and then I'll sew the other one in. And here we go. Here's the shield all done. I was in a bit of a time crunch, so I didn't do this video until after I've used it. I was fighting Crown Tourney. So it held up pretty good. There's one little scuff mark. Somebody clipped it with a basket hilt or something. And some duct tape scuffs, but that'll clean off. That's the nice thing about using the varnish. Is you can just clean it with just regular household cleaners. When I put in my bolts, I added washers. You want a washer behind them because when you're doing up the bolt, if the head spins, it can spin the canvas. So you put a washer behind there. And I like using the brash ones because they're pretty. Certainly prettier than the plain steel ones. Take a look at the back. So in my editor videos, I talk about how I do my strapping. So just leather, proper leather, not the cheapy belt leather that you get. And a hockey face mask. It's a hardened steel, very light, very strong. And I like to use a garage door handle, so that's a formed heavy steel. And then I just hockey tape a piece of doweling in there to give me a bit of a grip. And I mentioned before how I add an extra clip just to stop the whole mass from rocking around. Holds in pretty good. So, that's how I make all my shields. It's a bit of a tedious. I know I talked a lot, but I'd rather talk too much than not enough. Thanks for coming along and bearing with me. If you have any questions, just dump them in the comments and I will get back to you. I'm happy to help out.